Looks like he's in the car.
Wow, it got really quiet all of a sudden. What happened?
You.
Me? Well, welcome. This is not a branch sanctioned meeting, so we don't have song and prayer. If you were expecting that, Ryan, do you want to sing? I didn't.
Yeah.
But they don't let those songs in here.
True.
So I've done this 4 times. She just won't do it on her own. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Jeff Pratt. This is my wife Darlene. We were in the Santa Susana congregation 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And what did we figure? 2007 we left. So it's been a while. We were in Oak Knolls before that. Just after leaving Santa Susana, we were in Simi for 6 months. And then we went to crazy to the valley to join Hindi. Why did we join Hindi? Lowell, you want to take that? Oh, she knows the answer to this one. Go.
We were finding a lot of the ones in the territory that spoke Hindi. I guess I should say we as being his sister, Darla, and then asking Bhattacharya's, how do you say hello, how are you in the different Indian languages? And it's like, where are you finding all these people? Well, in the territory. And then they took her to an official group down in Artesia, a Hindi group. And then a little bit later we went, and then they started teaching us the Hindi letters, alphabets in December of 2006. Then the circuit overseer in Panorama City heard about it and wanted the 2 groups, the one here that was learning and the one there, to join. And he said, if you do that, great things can happen. So we joined in June of 2007, and great things have happened.
And instead, you've got us. We've enjoyed the ride. We've seen some wonderful progress in the Hindi field in the United States. We were the 3rd congregation that was formed in the United States in Hindi. Right now, I think we're over 30. So in the last 10 years, we've seen that kind of growth. And the number of groups, unnumbered. The branch knows, but it used to be able to, we could go through a list. We can't do that anymore. It's by state now, and so it's very difficult to get the number. We understand that there's nearly 30 groups as well. More starting each month.
And at the regional, they just had it last weekend in Jersey. They broke 1,000 with the attendance. And when we first started attending the circuit assemblies in Hindi and back east, there was 300 to 600. And now and that's not counting all of them, because there's several from here that cannot afford to go out to Jersey for the conventions, but they broke 1,000.
So that's a little bit of background into us. Why did we move to India? In 2014 at our regional convention, a brother came from the India branch, and he made an announcement. During the announcement section, they had him come out onto the platform and read a letter from the branch. They asked for help in 3 areas. They wanted brothers and sisters who were native Indians to come back to India to help with translating. Non-native brothers and sisters to come to India to translate. The RTOs were bursting at the seams, needing translators. And then the 3rd area, they needed mature brothers to come to help congregations. I kind of wonder about the wisdom about sending me to India. Now we've had a good time. So that December and January, Darlene and I, brother and sister Flegel from the Hindi congregation in Los Angeles, there, Mission Hills, and then a sister from Montreal, Hindi, all went to India to scope out the land, so to speak. By that time, we'd already made our decision that we were going to move. We'd already written our letter to the India branch. They expected us to visit the service department while we were visiting to give us a little direction. When we were there, they said if you could move right now, there's 4 cities that we would give you your choice of: Mumbai, Jaipur, Delhi, and Kolkata. Well, Kolkata was the only one that was not in our itinerary for our visit. So we got to look at 3 of them. And of the 3, we enjoyed Jaipur the most. It's about 4.5 hours southwest of New Delhi, in a very desert-like area. There's one congregation there, which we did not get to meet on our initial trip. When we moved there, there were 21 publishers. The only congregation in a city of 7 million. We have our work cut out for us, right? So we could see a real need there. They had 1 elder, 2 ministerial servants. So you can imagine the meetings and the meeting parts that those brothers had. Every week they had at least 1, usually 2 meeting parts on the midweek meeting. Every 3 weeks they had a public talk. So when I moved in, now it's every 4 weeks we have a public talk. Another brother moved in from Dallas, so it's almost double for those brothers. Imagine their relief. Now they only have 1 meeting part on the midweek meeting. So it's been a real blessing to them, even if it is just me, right? We've enjoyed our stay there a great deal. Today we're going to show you some pictures of what we see day to day in our ministry, and introduce you to some of our Bible students and congregation. I have about 5 minutes of things that I say that I printed. The rest is up to you. We want your questions, and we'll fill in where we can. We have some experiences that we didn't write down that we tried to tell you, but other than that, that's the show. It's not anything elaborate. One scripture that I would like to start with is Luke chapter 17. I used it, used it in my presentation last year before we went to help encourage the brothers and sisters that I showed that to reach out, to do all that they possibly could. Whether they could move to another land or not, are we doing everything that we can? I was reviewing my notes from that presentation for this one, and I looked at the scripture and I realized that I really hadn't got the full flavor of the scripture. It's a group of scriptures that really give us a little more understanding. So I'll read all 4 of the verses. Starting with verse 7 of Luke 17, it says, "Which one of you who has a slave plowing or shepherding would say to him when he comes in from the field, 'Come here at once and dine at the table'? Rather, will he not say to him, 'Get something ready for me to have, my evening meal, and put on an apron and serve me until I finish eating and drinking, and afterward you can eat and drink'? He will not feel gratitude to the slave because he did what was assigned, will he? Likewise," verse 10 says, "when you have done all the things assigned to you, say, 'We are good for nothing slaves. What we have done is what we ought to have done.'" After we've served for a year in Jaipur, that's the way we feel. We feel like we're at the end of a day of hard work. We've done what we should have done today, but there's a lot of work ahead of us. And so we'll just get back into the work as slaves. When we reached India and got into the congregation, the brothers from the branch had prepared a special letter and guidelines for foreigners that come to help in India, just to help us to get a feeling of the flavor of the work and some things that we need to deal with for safety. And so 2 brothers came over and talked to Darlene and I, and Sister Leonard from the Montreal group, she came with us when we moved. So just a couple of the things that they went over with us. They gave us advice on our attire. Because in India, modesty is a much higher priority than here in America. A a much higher priority than here in America. And so what you see Darlene wearing is something that you might see a typical woman wearing in Jaipur. Other parts of India, this is even more modest than that they would wear. But the brothers in Jaipur encouraged the sisters to wear the long kurti or kameez because of the modesty issue. And Jaipur is a very traditional city, a very old city, and they value that there in their culture. So the sisters wear the long kurti over the pajama. It's actually called the salwar kameez. And the dupatta, the scarf around her neck, is very, very important. It's part of modesty. If you don't wear that, it's like going partially undressed. So, a must for the sisters. Then they looked at me and said, no more kurta pajamas. Right? They're so comfortable. What I'm wearing is actually called a sherwani. It's more formal than a kurta pajama. I've worn both here when I was in the Hindi congregation. The sherwanis we typically wore at conventions or when I had a special part, perhaps a memorial talk. Usually not, other than that. The kurta pajama I would wear in service and for all of our meetings. In Jaipur, there are a few of the men that wear the kurta pajama still. But by and large, most men are wearing Western dress slacks and a short sleeve shirt or long sleeve shirt in the winter. For work, jeans and t-shirts. They've gone to the Western. And so for me to wear kurta pajamas or sherwanis, it would draw undue attention to me, which was my purpose here, to shock the Indians into listening. But there, it would cause too much attention and might cause problems for the congregation. So they gave us that advice. The branch asked us to closely follow the brothers' direction in the congregation because they would know the dangers where we were. Same instruction might not be given throughout India, such as the dress. They discussed Matthew chapter 10 and verse 16, where Jesus said, look, I'm sending you out as sheep among wolves, so prove yourself cautious as serpents and yet innocent as doves. Just always be careful about the way we spoke and acted so that we weren't detracting from the message. There was some safety precautions given to us. You know, general things that you would think about in a city. How many would go in East LA by themselves? Well, probably we won't go anywhere in Jaipur within reason by ourselves either. Sometimes we'll walk to the market alone in the daytime, but it wouldn't be prudent other times, so we take those precautions seriously. Shortly after we arrived in India, another roadblock was put in front of us by the organization. Printing stopped. So we have no magazines, no books, no Bibles, no tracts that are printed in India anymore. Anything that we get is imported. So the things that we regularly get are the meeting workbook and the study magazine, and they're sent directly to the publisher from Toronto. We don't have magazines to place anymore. So that made it a little more difficult. One other piece of direction that the brothers gave us that related to our ministry was, as foreigners in Jaipur, we are not involved in the public witnessing. So no door-to-door witnessing, no cart witnessing, no tables set up. It's all informal witnessing and Bible studies and return visits. So there were a few little roadblocks, but we've done all right. We went in there as publishers and we've come out as regular auxiliary pioneers and have no problem making our time. We're loving that part of our time there.
The public
It's okay.
public witnessing, the Friends can do. The natives can do the door-to-door, and they can do the cart witnessing. But it's just the foreigners that are not allowed to do that.
And we talked a little bit about the danger there that might create is because of a political party in the country called the RSS. They put a lot of pressure on the rest of government to stop any kind of Christianity being in India. And so if they see something just taking off, they try and stop it quickly. And we'll explain a little bit more in one of our experiences how that affects us. One of our Bible students was affected indirectly by that, or directly.
There was another couple that moved to Kolkata shortly after we did to help with the Bengali field there. And they were posting pictures as far as doing door-to-door and cart witnessing. And since then, they have received direction from the society asking them to curtail that public witnessing too. They could continue with Bible studies and informal witnessing, but for the safety, especially for the Friends, they have asked them not to.
Would it help if the lights were off on the platform? No? Okay, it's up to you. You tell me if you can't see the pictures. On each of the slides we have multiple pictures, so they're smaller, so if you want to move closer, now's the time to do it. We're going to start showing the slides. Oops, let's go this way. We'll start with our day-to-day life, the things that we see around us each day. And of course, we got to start with food, right? So please feel free to interrupt us at any time if you have questions. We want your questions. Otherwise, this is going to be a very short slideshow. Yes,
the local market that you guys walk to?
This is the local market. From our first home, our first apartment, that was about half a mile away, not quite. So we'd walk over there 2 to 3 times a week. Was the food costly? No. We have backpacks that, sometimes both of our backpacks are full with vegetables and fruit, and it costs about 250 to 300 rupees, $4 to $5 US. So we have an abundance of fresh fruit and vegetables all the time. Sounds a little weird for an old cowboy from Montana to be eating just veg, but so far.
What are you eating over here?
Over here,
Yeah.
this is veg biryani. That's a rice dish and naan bread. Very tasty. Most of the Indian restaurants here in the LA area have biryani. It's a good place to start if you're not sure you like Indian food. Biryani's excellent. Upper right-hand corner, you find a lot of vendors, street vendors, probably similar to what you would see in Tijuana or other places in Mexico, just like there. Don't eat from the street vendors. This one is actually, it says Super Chinese Corner. Super Chinese Corner. Doesn't that sound like a place you want to eat in India? Super Chinese Corner. Yes, please come.
The cart just above the word food, sometimes these guys, we call them sabjiwalas. That's the fruit people or the vegetable people. And they will load their carts up with fruits and vegetables, and then they go to a certain destination, and then that's where they would sell their stuff. And the size of that cart, the one to the far left with the white shirt on, the man sitting there is sitting on one of those carts on a plastic bucket. He has a propane tank there, and he is roasting peanuts. And so sometimes they'll crawl up into their carts, not the food carts basically like that, but there's some other carts that they have, and they'll just crawl up inside and take a nap if they're not busy.
Lower left-hand corner, the excitement on Darlene's face, real coffee. See, most of the coffee we get in India is instant. We get used to it, but when we get to Costa Coffee or Cafe Coffee Day, occasionally we'll have a little treat. Oh, good. It scanned my hard drive. Right beside her is a little picture of some guys extracting honey from comb that was right at our apartment. The bees, a couple floors down, decided that they'd set up a comb there, and thousands and thousands of these bees came and made honey for about a month. They extracted somewhere between 10 and 15 gallons of honey out of that comb. We bought some of it. It's very, very tasty. They took the bees away, but they came back, and so we left. Plate next to it, we were craving tacos, so we used roti and chicken and made tacos, right? Just above that is his brother and sister, Albert and Kavisha Peter. He's our coordinator. She's a regular pioneer in our congregation. We'll show you. I think he's in other pictures in the congregation later on.
Yeah.
I think. Any questions?
Are they natives?
Yes. Yeah, he was the one elder before I moved in.
And how did they get the truth?
Oh wow, how did he get the truth? One of the sisters contacted him like 30 years ago.
Yeah, he was in
Him and his
soccer.
mom, and came in from the field. I think she was more raised in the truth with her mom and sister, although I think they learned the truth when she was in her teens, not in Jaipur. I don't think either one of them were in Jaipur when they were contacted with the truth to begin with. Perhaps Albert was.
I don't remember.
Yeah, sorry.
And what about the water?
The water is bottled if you want to be safe to drink it. So our first month and a half, that's all we drank was bottled or boiled water. When we moved into our apartment, we insisted on an RO system, which made the city water safe to drink. It's filtered like 5 times. Then when we moved to the house that we're now in, we purchased an RO system. So we've not had any sickness due to water or food since we've been there. But we're very careful where we eat when we eat out.
We both had situations when we first moved there. He ended up in the hospital, emergency room type thing, and just before we came here, I ended up in the hospital. And testing was done, and it ended up being we weren't drinking enough water. It wasn't that the water was bad, but we just weren't drinking enough.
And so that leads you often to questions about medical, good medical care there. Think about the doctors in this country, many of them are coming from India, right? And the procedures that we had, including x-rays, sonograms, ultrasound, and other procedures, plus emergency room visits for each of us, combined cost less than $300, including the drugs that they gave us.
So you don't have Obamacare over there?
And we're doing pretty
I think
good.
that sounds like a political question. Oh, come on. There, thank you. We'll show you some of the contrasts that we see every day. The ultra-modern to the not-so-modern. Yes, that was Krispy Kreme bouncing in there. In Delhi Airport. The upper right-hand corner is the Delhi domestic airport. It was just finished when we took this picture about 6 months ago. When we first got there, it was still under construction. Beautiful, beautiful architecture, modern architecture. If you look in the lower left-hand corner, that's not so new. It was built in the 1600s. It's Amber Fort, and still standing and very beautiful. Jewels embedded into the walls, mirrors embedded into the walls. It's amazing. So you see that kind of contrast all the time. The technology, most everyone has 1, 2, or 3 cell phones, depending on what kind of business they're in and where they are in the city. If they're moving around the city, they have to have more than 1 cell phone because there's different cell carriers within the city, and nothing is very dependable outside of their area. So, and most of their cell phones have 2 SIM cards, so you've got now 4 or 6 cell carriers, right? You see the tractor there, that's fairly modern. Just below that is a little lady carrying her own load. You see it every day. So, a little contrast, right? Oh, come on.
Is that a temple, the older building, the 1600? What is that?
No, it was the palace of the king.
Oh,
Perhaps down at the bottom where the dome is, they might have had some kind of worship going on there. They didn't really explain what that building was, but for the most part, that entire building up there was the palace of the king. And his 9 wives, and they had equal-sized apartments, the 9 wives. Crazy man, right?
Picture under Krispy Kreme.
Oh, the picture under the Krispy Kreme. Well, that's our shoemaker making a shoe. Actually, these shoes. Yes. All leather, except, of course, the sole. It's, I don't know, something that will stand up to traffic. Those shoes cost me about $20 US. Camel leather, soft. I just took a picture from the internet of a style that I wanted and took it over to him. 4 weeks later, he had them built for me. He had some that were already pre-made. He'd already made them. I think I bought those for, what, 850 rupees, I believe. Just a little over $10.